100 years of shaping leaders. 100 years of strengthening institutions. 100 years of transforming public service.
The public service of Kenya should reward results, not routine. Impact, not attendance. We must stop measuring time spent and start measuring value created. What matters is not how long a public servant sits at the desk, but how much difference that public servants make in the life of a citizen. For us to make progress, we must not continue to make peace with mediocrity.
100 pamoja.
100 pamoja.
100 pamoja.
Now, the next century begins.
We are now celebrating not just excellence, transformation, agility, efficiency in the public sector, but we will be reflecting on the future of the public service as we support His Excellency the President to realize the vision of moving from the third world country to the first world country, our journey to Singapore.
Join us from the 6th to 8th July as the Kenya School of Government marks 100 years of excellence with 3 days of dialogue, innovation, reflection, and a shared vision for the future of leadership and public service. A century of excellence in public service, building leaders, transforming nations.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the centenary celebrations of the Kenya School of Government. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the second day of the centenary celebrations of the Kenya School of Government, an institution that has been on the forefront in transforming nations through public service. It is my pleasure to take you through this program today. I'll be your host. My name is Resian Lebai. And before we officially kickstart this ceremony today, I would like to welcome Jonah to make a short prayer before we can proceed. Jonah, please step to the stage.
Thank you. My name is Jonah.
I want us to go before the Lord in prayer. Let us pray. Father, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we come before you with humility and thanksgiving. Indeed, this is yet another day that you've made, that we may rejoice and be glad in it. Lord Jehovah, we ask that as we gather here, O God of glory, to listen to our speakers today, Jehovah God, for the topics that you prepared forth. Lord Jehovah, we want to pray that may your will and grace be sufficient for us, O God, even as we listen, O God, let us internalize and take home actions that we are going to implement, O God of glory. We thank you for each and every one who is here, O God of glory, that at the end of it, we shall go back, O God of glory, wherever we came from, O God, having changed and having gained the knowledge that you prepared for us. For we thank you with thanksgiving in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Jonah, for the prayers. As we have more people coming in, just a quick recap for those who were not here yesterday. Quite a number of things were discussed in our conversations in the morning, in the afternoon, from their excellencies, the ambassadors, the cabinet secretaries, the PSs, on transformation of public service through global competitiveness. And of course, we had a high-level advocacy panel on how we can grow and build national wealth. So we're going to have a short recap for you on the screen for those who missed these conversations, so that we can also be charged as we participate in today's conversations. Remember, it's about participation. We are not just here to have a good time, take tea, take lunch and go home, but it's to have conversations that actually spur growth towards transforming the nation through public service. So as we watch this recap, let us speak up on points that we want to expound on, because we want to make our sessions as engaging as possible, where we will have a session where you can engage the panelists who will be coming on the stage shortly. So take note on what was discussed, what you would like to expand on, your thoughts on some of these issues, and let us be an engaging audience as we start this day. So I will direct your eyes on the screen for the highlights on what happened yesterday.
A centenary celebration is an opportunity to honor those who laid the foundations of this institution, celebrate those who continue to advance its mission, and renew our commitments to future generations.
Our greatest legacy is found in the thousands of public servants whose leadership has strengthened the institution over the years. We are particularly honored this morning that this milestone coincides with the graduation of officers drawn from different levels of government, each representing its full commitment to continuous learning and leadership development across the public sector.
What counts in public service? First, integrity. And if we can keep an honest, competent government, never mind it being brilliant, that is a tremendous achievement.
Which involves training of our field officers, our chiefs, our assistant chiefs.
I am delighted to join the country today as we celebrate the century of Kenya's School of Government existence. The institution's tremendous contribution and value addition to Kenya's national development, human capital development, and career progression are an enduring journey that we need to celebrate today. The public service remains one of the most important instruments through which government translates vision into reality and promises into tangible outcomes for citizens.
We understand that Kenya is an economic hub and a gateway in East Africa.
For Kenya to learn, use our civil service, our leadership, and our public institutions to build this growth for the future.
A round of applause for a successful Dan and for all the people, especially KSG under the leadership of Director Nura Mohammed, who's the Director General, for making all this possible. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Now, interesting conversations were happening yesterday, and particularly in the afternoon session on education in the panel that was led by Professor Laba Nairo and was moderated by the former Director General, Professor Ludeki, and was also joined by senior faculty, Mr. Angote. And some of the things that came up was education by itself is not a tool. And one of the things that Mr. Ayuro really emphasized on was that education without character will not give us the results we're looking for. And in this sense, he was referring to morality in the sense of education that delivers quality people. And he gave an example of Daystar University, where he said, for example, you go to Daystar, and every bathroom is accessible for the teachers, the students. There is no separate bathroom. And he made a very simple example of it by showing that in those bathrooms, you will not find a person who walks out with a roll of toilet paper and stuffs it in their bags because they don't feel the need to do that. And it felt like such, an example that you would not expect from a professor, but he basically was just highlighting the fact that education that produces character, because it was in relation to the kind of leaders we see in the public sector. And one of the things that came up was corruption. And he says, contrary to popular belief, it is not only in the public service where corruption is, it is everywhere. And these are some of the places where it starts. It starts small. It starts with you not being responsible for little things. And the other thing that came up in these conversations through Mr. Angote was a place of culture, which is something that personally I'm very particular about. And he talked about his experience as a young man. While growing up from class 1 to class 4, he studied in his vernacular language, counting, writing, and all that. And he says he was very capable, that he would do what we call accounting, basic accounting of a record of monies that have come in and a record of monies that have left, but in vernacular. And it posed an interesting conversation on if we are working to transform nations to the first class, or we want to transform our, what we call third world nations to first class, the place of language and the place of culture. And one thing that I'm picking, which was also shared by Her Excellency, the Chinese ambassador yesterday in her presentation and submission, is how fast China was able to transform within a generation. Something that is considered a miracle because it has never happened before. France did it in 80 years. Britain did it in 70 years. And Germany did it in about 60 years. So China was the kind of story that we wrote history, where over 600 million people were moved out of poverty in 50 years. If we are considering Kenya to be 63 years old, counting from independence, because Kenya is definitely older than that, then in 63 years, we definitely have had the opportunity to do what China has done, what Korea has done. But one thing that comes across these countries, when I look at Asia, for example, is the fact that language is a very pertinent part of their culture. And they have been able to achieve this success while studying in their own native languages. So what is a place for culture? But also another thing that came out from the consul from Singapore, a country that Kenya says we aspire to be like, because Singapore started where Kenya started 63 years ago under the former Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. And one of the things that Lee Kuan Yew really looked at was sustainability, in the sense of, yes, we want to grow, but what are the basic areas and where must we start? Because sometimes growth feels like it is too much if we feel like we have to solve every problem at the same time. But in public service, and I think that's why we're here today, is to figure out where are these places where we can make small incremental growths, without having to feel the need that we are solving the entire world's problem in one go. And for Lee Kuan Yew, that place was the environment. Singapore was heavily dependent on Malaysia for water, for its water. And he looked at it as a situation that is likely to pose a challenge in the future. Why? Because dependability. What if Malaysia decides our water is not enough, our population has grown, we need to do farming or something, and we have to use this water elsewhere? So what then? And he looks at the situation in his country. Their rivers were heavily polluted, so that water was not an option. So he decides, first, we will clean the environment. We will ensure that our water is usable. And he made it very punitive to pollute. And this is something that I wish the graduates that were here yesterday could hear this. But in local places, to ensure that care for the environment is non-negotiable. So he decided, no, if you are going to decide to pollute for whatever reason, be it corporate, be it personal, we will make it very punitive for you. So first take back the waterways and then recycle that water so that should it not be enough in the future, we can rely on the old water that we have already. So it is like, let me call it a circular economy, but in the ecosystem. So, and those are some of the steps that Singapore took to be what it is today. It did not start from a place of, big trade or stuff like that. It started from the environment that we live in. So that you also, like I always say, when you come to KSG, the first thing, I was really shocked when the first time I learned 10 years ago that this is a government institution. Why? Because we have always felt like a government institution has a certain look. It looks haggard, it looks like it is not well maintained, it looks like you just have people who are not reliable, but you walk to KSG, you're like, how can this be a government institution? And I think that is what exactly this is all about, leading by example, leading from the front. So when other public servants also come here for training, for whatever it is that they're coming to do, the environment by itself starts to teach you that you can actually live in a very good environment that you're taking care of, because this is not by default. If KSG today decided the environment didn't matter, in 1 week, the kind of takataka that will be out there, it will definitely not be the space that it has been. So let the conversations today guide us into making this small or big incremental growth towards building a national wealth, towards building culture that enhances, because I believe a nation grows through culture and the way of its people that is honored, that brings value. And also this helps us to develop global competitiveness. I would like to mention something briefly that I thought maybe the ambassador yesterday, the French ambassador to Kenya, His Excellency Arnaud Souquet, would mention, because we've interacted with him through a program that is funded by the French Development Agency, AFD, and they are running a basketball experience in collaboration with NBA across the country. And their target is secondary school kids and primary school kids to build competitiveness, to build ability, and also to develop a general love for the sport. I believe Kenya has, on the global competitive scale, we are doing very well in sports, specifically athletics. And we're hoping also to see other areas rise as well, football, to what Harambee Star was when I was growing up. There was even a song, Harambee Stars, Kiboko Yao. That is one of the tools that I believe can help us build global competitiveness, because trade is one thing. The environment is the other thing, but talent that people have, this can be harnessed to develop this nation for every individual and for the country at large. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panel for this next session that will be moderated by Mr. Gerald Wandera. On policy framework and shifts necessary for transformation. And the panelist on this session will be Dr. Romano Kiome, who is going to handle national transformation in high-value agriculture. Dr. Boniface Makoha, who's the Principal Secretary, State Department of Economic Planning. We also have Mr. Cyril Odede Wagunda, who's the Principal Secretary, State Department for Public Investments and Assets Management on investment pillars of national transformation, and Ambassador Johnson Weru, who's Ministry, the CBS Secretary for Partnerships, Ministry of East Africa Community, on Kenya's global competitiveness. We also have David Mugonyi, who's the Director General Communications Authority of Kenya, on strategic communication and national transformation. As our panelists make their way on stage, I would like to recognize the presence of Mahmoud Said Adad, who's the Director General, Civil Service Institute, Somaliland. Thank you very much for making time to be with us. And also recognize the presence of Abdirahman Ibrahim Ahmed, who's the Director of Planning and Statistics, Civil Service Institute. A round of applause for our moderator and panelists as they make their way on stage.
Hii mpango ya Kenya School of Government ya Under the Tree series kabisa ina align na maisha yetu ya pastoralist. Kwanza sisi mambo yetu mingi, hata leo hii MCA wetu akija Oldonyero akiwa na ujumbe, the first thing wazee watamwambia wacha tupeleke chini ya mti. So sisi kama jamii, we want to say thank you because that is the missing link.
Program kama hii Under the Tree series, hii ndio tunatumia kwa mikutano zetu kama kuweza kupeleka awareness mambo mingi, tunatumia Under the Tree. Na tunasema NGOs ama ile mikutano mingi ambayo inafanyika kwa mambo ya usalama inafanyika kwa mahoteli, tungependa iletwe Under the Tree. Hao kina mama wafundishwe.
Sisi ni pastoralist community. Kila swala ama ukitafuta majibu ya vitu lazima ukuje tukutane chini ya miti. Sisi lazima tufike kwa wananchi hapa nyinyi ili tujadiliane na tukubaliane maneno mengi.
Policy shifts to take us to first world status in your lifetime. When you look at yourself, you who are here yesterday, as a preamble, you heard that there are countries that have transformed from a middle level or low level income country to a first world country status in just 30 years. 30 years for us is 6 planning period, since government planning period is 5 years. So it means if we are able to do it from now, and this is 2026, we are just counting 30 years and Kenya would be first world country. That's the bold, ambitious, and pragmatic approach that we are going to have in the next session. My colleagues have been already introduced, and I'll not take much time as the moderator. I'll ask the first speaker to take stage, introduce the area of discussion, tell us who he is. The State Department of Economic Planning, PS, has given us his Director General, a technical officer, completely involved, hands-on, intensively in day-to-day activities of planning for our nation. We want to listen to our brother. And as you speak, tell us the details and be very free to engage. Now, colleagues, we have time between now and 1. And you colleagues who are seated behind and invited guests, mmoja akimaliza kuongea, we will go to the next person. Then you will engage in plenary discussions. Because are we 4? We are 3. Let's first do the first one, because letting will do it in the afternoon is fine, and communications, Director General Communications Authority is not yet here. So let's do the first one, and we might do first one actually and go to plenary sessions and break for our tea break based on time. Each one of you colleagues here, you have 20 minutes. Now Wandera is a bit strict with the time. So you speak for your 20 minutes, and then we pick up from there. Thank you, brother. You can speak standing from there. I'll mute my mic now.
Thank you, Moderator Wandera. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me also to write on the established protocols so that we don't mess up. My PS, Dr. Boniface Makoa, was supposed to be here, but because he had another engagement with the Deputy President, where he is currently, he said that I can represent him in this distinguished panel. Allow me that I'm going to speak on the insights from the Principal Secretary, State Department for Economic Planning, in this high-level policy dialogue. My name is Maseni Chara. I'm the Director General for Economic Planning at the State Department for Economic Planning, the National Treasury. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give a quick introduction on what we are going to speak about. That, of course, we are having a defining challenge of our generation is not whether Kenya has a vision for transformation, but whether we possess the institutional capability, policy coherence, and implementation discipline to convert that vision into measurable improvements in the lives of our people. History provides a clear lesson. No country has attained sustainable prosperity through isolated reforms or fragmented development initiatives. Nations that successfully transformed from Singapore and the Republic of Korea to China, Malaysia, and closer to home, Rwanda, did so through deliberate long-term planning, strong institutions, disciplined implementation, and an unwavering commitment to national priorities over political circles. For Kenya, the foundation already exists. Our Constitution, Kenya Vision 2030, and its fourth medium-term plan, informed by the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, the African Union Agenda 2063, and of course the EAC 2050, collectively provide a comprehensive framework for our national transformation. Therefore, the challenge before us is not designing another plan, but ensuring that planning becomes the engine of execution, accountability, and sustainable national competitiveness. Policy frameworks are much more than government documents. They represent the architecture through which a nation aligns its aspirations, institutions, investments, and people towards a common future. Strong policy frameworks provide strategic direction, certainty for investors, coordination across institutions, efficient allocation of scarce resources, accountability for results, and resilience against future shocks. Without coherent policy frameworks, ladies and gentlemen, even well-funded development programs become fragmented, duplicative, and ultimately ineffective. Today's global economy rewards countries that are agile, innovative, and strategically coordinated. The countries attracting investment today are not necessarily those with the largest markets, but those with predictable policies, efficient institutions, skilled labor, digital readiness, and high-quality infrastructure. Kenya therefore faces a strategic imperative. Planning must evolve from managing government programs to shaping national competitiveness. The global context demands a new planning paradigm. The world is undergoing one of the most profound economic transitions since the Industrial Revolution. Artificial intelligence is reshaping production. Digital technologies are redefining value chains, Climate change is transforming investment decisions. Geopolitical fragmentation is reorganizing global trade. The green economy is creating entirely new industries. Demographic changes are altering labor markets. Meanwhile, competition for capital, technology, and talent has become truly global. In this environment, countries cannot rely on incremental reforms. Transformation now requires strategic foresight, adaptive institutions, and policy agility. Economic planning can no longer be retrospective. It must become anticipatory. Governments must increasingly plan for industries that do not yet exist, jobs that have not yet emerged, and technologies that are still evolving. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya is one of Africa's most comprehensive planning systems. Our planning architecture has integrated the Constitution of Kenya, Kenya Vision 2030, successful medium-term plans, county integrated development plans, public investment management, results-based management, and national monitoring and evaluation. The challenge, therefore, is less about planning frameworks and more about planning effectiveness. 3 implementation gaps deserve particular attention. First, policy fragmentation continues to weaken development impact. National government, county government, state cooperation, and development partners sometimes pursue similar objectives through separate planning and financing mechanisms. 2, the link between planning, budgeting, and implementation remains inconsistent. Too often, budgets respond to annual pressures and political declarations rather than long-term priorities. Third, performance measurements remains overly focused on inputs and activities instead of outcomes and impact. Transformation demands a planning culture where every policy, every program, and every public investment is assessed by the value it creates for the citizens. 5 strategic policy shifts for national transformation also needs to mention. Shift from expenditure management to wealth creation. Traditional planning has focused largely on allocating budgets. Transformational planning focuses on expanding national wealth. The critical question should no longer be how much money was spent. Instead, we should ask how many sustainable jobs were created, how much productivity increased, how many firms became globally competitive, how much private investment was mobilized, how much did exports grow, how many households moved out of poverty. Planning should therefore become an instrument for wealth creation rather than expenditure administration. 2, shift from government-centered development to private sector-led growth. Globally, sustainable economic transformation has been driven by dynamic private enterprise. Government creates the conditions. Business creates wealth. The role of government should increasingly focus on policy predictability, microeconomic stability, efficient regulation, quality infrastructure, skilled human capital, innovation ecosystem, and competitive markets. Therefore, planning should actively crowd in private capital. 3, shift from sector planning to integrated national planning. Modern economies are deeply interconnected. Agriculture depends on roads. Roads depends on land. Manufacturing depends on energy. Tourism depends on security. Digital services depend on broadband. Industrial growth depends on logistics. No ministry transforms an economy independently. We must plan as a whole of government, or we must plan as one. Therefore, the concept that we have now come up in our next planning cycle is planning as one. We have to think about that. 4, shift from reactive planning to strategic foresight. Planning institutions should become centers of national intelligence. Rather than merely responding to crises, they should anticipate future opportunities. This requires institutional capability in economic forecasting, demographic modeling, climate risk analysis, artificial intelligence, geospatial planning, big data analytics, scenario planning, and predictive policy analysis. Countries that anticipate change outperform those that merely react to it. 5, shift from national competitiveness to global competitiveness. Kenya no longer competes only within East Africa. Our benchmark should increasingly be the world's most dynamic emerging economies. Planning should therefore monitor competitiveness indicators such as productivity, innovation, logistic efficiency, artificial intelligence. Of course, Kenya no longer competes only within East Africa. Our benchmark should increasingly be the world's most dynamic emerging economies. Planning should therefore monitor competitiveness indicators such as productivity, innovation, logistic efficiency, digital readiness, infrastructure quality, ease of doing business, research intensity, export sophistication, and institutional effectiveness. Global competitiveness should become an explicit national planning objective. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, building national wealth requires expanding productive capacity across the economy. Kenya's planning priorities should therefore increasingly concentrate investment where economic multipliers are highest. I know that the session of paper number 10 of 1965, when our fathers were founding this country, they said that they wanted to put resources where they were highly productive. But of course, the thing that we did was to marginalize other places. But I don't think that's what we want to do. We want to put every shilling where we must reap the services of our people. So, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, ambitious development strategies require equally ambitious financing strategies. Public resources alone cannot finance Kenya's long-term transformation. The financing framework should increasingly rely on 4 complementary pillars: stronger domestic resource mobilization, improved public expenditure efficiency, expanded public-private partnership, innovative blended finance and development finance mechanism. Equally important is ensuring that every public investment passes rigorous appraisal, demonstrates value for money, and contributes directly to the productive and the competitiveness. Public investment should increasingly be charged by economic returns rather than expenditure levels. We need to have institutions' capability that will determine our success. The greatest determinant of success transformation is institutional quality. Countries with similar natural resources often achieve vastly different development outcomes because of differences in governance capability. Kenya should therefore continue strengthening public investment management, results-based management, national monitoring and evaluation, digital planning systems, evidence-based policy making, integrated national and county planning, performance management, and strategic policy research. The State Department for Economic Planning is uniquely positioned to provide strategic leadership by ensuring coherence across government planning, investment priorities, and a monitoring system. Of course, we have international lessons. Global experience demonstrated that transformation follows remarkably consistent principles. Singapore teaches us that disciplined implementation and institutional integrity matter as much as policy design. The Republic of Korea demonstrated that industrial policy, export competitiveness, and human capital can rapidly transform an economy. China illustrates the value of adaptive long-term planning, supported by strategic infrastructure investment and economic reforms. Rwanda shows how results-based management, digital government, and institutional accountability accelerates implementation. Malaysia reminds us that economic diversification enhances resilience and creates multiple engines of growth. These experiences reinforce our central lesson. There are no shortcuts to transformation. National prosperity is built patiently through consistent policy implementation over decades. Ladies and gentlemen, looking ahead, a new planning philosophy. The next generation of planning in Kenya must move beyond managing government programs. It must shape markets. It must anticipate technological disruption. It must mobilize private investment. It must strengthen competitiveness. It must create jobs. It must improve productivity. Above all, it must build national wealth. Planning should therefore become the country's strategic competitive advantage. Every plan should answer one fundamental question: how does this intervention improve Kenya's long-term productivity, resilience, and global competitiveness? If planning consistently answers that question, transformation will no longer be an inspiration. It will become an inevitable outcome. Kenya possesses the vision, institutional architecture, and human potential necessary to become one of Africa's leading competitive economies. The opportunity before us is to convert planning into a dynamic instrument of transformation, one that aligns national priorities, mobilizes investment, strengthens institutions, and delivers measurable improvement for citizens. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, the future will not be shaped by ambition alone. It will be shaped by disciplined planning, evidence-based policy making, institutional excellence, and a collective execution. As we implement the fourth medium-term plan and advance toward the aspirations of Vision 2030 and the next long-term plan that we might be calling Kenya at 100, our success will ultimately be measured not by the number of plans we produce, but by the prosperity we create, the opportunities we expand, and the quality of life we improve for every Kenyan. This is the true purpose of national planning. That is the essence of national transformation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Colleagues, let us give him another hearty clap. With your permission, and because we'll break for tea, nitaomba tumu engage. Is when it becomes more interesting. And ndugu yangu Ichwara, hawa wakikuengage inamaanisha sisi wengine pia we are learning more. Key 5 areas. There are no shortcuts to national transformation. Practically, what does that mean? He says you ask critical questions. What is the formula of asking critical questions? He has said you plan as one. No fragmentation. How does that practically reflect in our government operations and functions of government of the 22 ministries, the over 60 state departments, the over 283 semi-autonomous government agencies that you call parastatals, the over 125 enforcement and regulatory agencies. It's a critical area to think through. He summarizes it all by saying discipline matters. Practically, what does that mean? And discipline and discipline and discipline. He finishes by saying, truly, we have institutional arrangement and alignment. Where is the gap then? If the government has correct institutional arrangement and alignment, and he summarizes by saying we have intergenerational challenge, which is momentous. No, it is not national threatening, no. It's just momentous, which means people must think wisely, critically. So I invite you, colleagues, that we can make comments, questions for our brother, the DG Economic Planning. And I told you by no means he's the hands-on person. So he has given the verdict of what will take us to transformation. Can I invite the speaker, guys? Go on, madam, now. Let's invite.
There is a request, Mr. Moderator, whether we could have all the panelists speak so that we can engage the audience once. So that in case there is anything that they have said that they want to pick on, then they can expound on
that. Is fine. Okay. Is that agreed, colleagues? Then that is fine. That is okay. Thank you, mistress of the ceremony today. Can we then on that note proceed? Yusuf, tunataka kuita Ambassador Johnson Weru to to speak to us about global not Johnson Well. Let me look at the program again. No, it's my brother Alfred Michael Kagika. Si utuzungumzie kuhusu the part of PS investment, public investment and asset management. Proceed, my brother.
Very well. So, honorable distinguished guests invited to this occasion, and I'm pretty pleased to see my teacher and former boss in attendance, Professor Nick Wajohi. I stand before you to represent the Principal Secretary in charge of public investments and asset management, Mr. Sergio Odende, who is indisposed, and the reason why he hasn't been able to join us this morning. But as I do so, I also, on a personal note, return to KSG as a proud student, as a proud public servant who has benefited from this great institution. And for us, especially those who started in the provincial administration, when we returned to KSG, though that time we used to call it KIA, you know, it feels like coming back home. So, and this is one institution which taught us not just what to think, but it challenged us to think better. So indeed, therefore, it's very pleasant and with a lot of nostalgia there for that. Even as I start here to represent my Principal Secretary, I do feel a sense of internal satisfaction, and what a way therefore to celebrate the milestone of the centenary for the institution. So the remarks therefore from the Principal Secretary for Public Investments and Assets Management during this high-level dialogue on building national wealth and global competitiveness. And it is both a pleasure therefore to represent my Principal Secretary at this occasion, where policymakers, practitioners, scholars and development partners are meeting to deliberate on one of the most critical questions of our time, and that is how nations can build resilient economies, create sustainable wealth, and enhance their competitiveness in an increasingly dynamic and global environment. So this conversation is particularly significant for our republic as we continue to implement our long-term blueprint and development vision that is well regarded as a Kenya Vision 2030, which recognizes that sustained economic transformation requires strategic investments, sound institutions, robust infrastructure, and effective governance to drive inclusive and sustainable growth. This again is in line with the vision that the bottom-up economic transformation agenda that the government has adopted seeks by targeting to accelerate the economic growth. And this is being done through the expansion of opportunities at the grassroots, increasing productivity, and creating jobs so that we can improve household incomes. Now, you remember that someone did once say that wealth is not measured by what a nation consumes today, but what it leaves behind for tomorrow. And this, therefore, resonates very well with the conversation that we have here today. The bottom-up economic transformation agenda places emphasis on transforming key productive sectors, strengthening enterprise development, enhancing food security, expanding affordable housing, healthcare, advancing the digital economy, and these priorities require substantial investment, effective management of public resources, and strong collaborations between the public and the private sector. The convergence of Vision 2030 and the BETA agenda presents our nation with a unique opportunity to strengthen the foundations of national wealth through strategic public investments, prudent management of public assets, and innovative financing mechanisms. The topic that we are discussing today, investment pillars of national transformation, speaks directly to this national agenda. Every successful nation has transformed itself through deliberate investment decisions, anchored partnerships, which are anchored on sound policy, effective institutions, and strategic partnerships. So national transformation is never accidental. It is well planned, financed, implemented, and sustained through visionary leadership and prudent stewardship of national resources and assets. And I think, our colleague from our sister State Department of Economic Planning has really, stressed and talked to the ideas behind good planning, and for sure, he has brought it up very clearly that there isn't any way we can develop if we are, accidentally. We have to be very deliberate about it. And it's also said that there's a saying that says that if you fail to plan, you may accidentally get somewhere. But in most of the cases, where you end up is not where you actually intended to go. So today I wish to share perspectives on how Kenya can leverage public investments, public-private partnerships, strategic asset management, and innovative financing mechanisms to accelerate sustainable economic transformation and build enduring national wealth. We have been told, and it is true, that countries that have successfully transformed, whether they are in Asia, whether they are in Europe, whether they are in the Middle East, and examples have been given before, have not merely increased public expenditure. Rather, they have invested strategically in infrastructure, in human capital, in technology, in industrialization, and institutional capacity. So for our Republic of Kenya, this means we have to move beyond viewing public investments simply as expenditure. Public investments must become productive national assets that generate long-term economic and social returns. Every shilling that is invested should strengthen national productivity, enhance competitiveness, and improve service delivery. Our public investment decisions must therefore be guided by three key principles, and this is economic value creation, financial sustainability, and intergenerational equity. So these principles ensure that today's investments not only serve the needs of the current generation, but become tomorrow's wealth for our great nation. Distinguished guests, Kenya possesses significant public assets across strategic sectors, and these range from transport, energy, financial services, agriculture, manufacturing, ICT, water, housing, and water resources and other natural resources. Historically, our public assets have often been viewed primarily from an administrative perspective. However, globally, there is a growing appreciation that public assets constitute national wealth, capable of generating sustainable economic returns when they are professionally managed. The National Treasury, through the Public Investments and Asset Management, has therefore been pursuing reforms aimed at strengthening governance, transparency, and improving the commercial performance of state investments. Efficient state corporations support national development by providing critical services, facilitating investment, opening new markets, and catalyzing industrial growth. Equally important is ensuring that public assets remain financially sustainable and are managed using sound commercial principles while delivering on their public mandate. And distinguished guests, all of us do take cognizance of the recently enacted Government-Owned Enterprises Act, which basically had the main thrust of bringing a better governance to the commercial entities that are run by government, and indeed to an extent of giving them a lot of independence so that the boards that run those organizations make decisions which have got less bureaucratic interventions. They make their own decisions and have leeway in deciding what is working and what is not working for them. So indeed, one of the most significant policy shifts in the growing uptake of public-private partnerships, what we refer as the PPPs, and this stems from a realization that government alone can no longer finance the scale of infrastructure required to support modern economies. The financing gap facing developing countries continues to widen as public debt constraints increase while infrastructure demand keeps on growing. PPPs provide an important mechanism for attracting private capital, innovation, technology, and operational efficiency, and bringing this into public infrastructure development. Kenya has made significant progress in strengthening the PPP framework through legal and institutional reforms that enhance transparency, improve project preparation, and provide greater confidence to investors. The objective is not to privatize public services. Rather, it is to leverage private sector expertise and financing while ensuring that strategic public interests remain protected. Well-designed PPPs enable governments to deliver infrastructure faster, reduce physical pressure, improve service quality, and allocate resources more efficiently. The government continues to expand PPP opportunities across transport, energy, affordable housing, healthcare, education, water and irrigation, logistics, and in the digital infrastructure segment. Some of the major PPP projects in our republic today, as we know them, include the Nairobi Expressway in Nairobi, the Nairobi-Nakuru Mau Summit Highway, the Garana-Kuraru Nafaka Food Security Project, the Kenya Defence Forces Residential Accommodation Project, the 35 megawatts Sosiani Menengai Geothermal Power Project, the 35 Quantum Menengai Geothermal Power Project, and another important milestone in Kenya's investment architecture that we would also wish to discuss today is the innovative financing vehicles that have been introduced, such as the National Infrastructure Fund, which in itself represents a strategic shift towards mobilizing long-term capital for infrastructure development. And most of these long-term capital are targeted from institutional investors, which may include pension funds and developmental finance institutions, as well as the private sector investors. So they get the opportunity to contribute to financing these transformational infrastructure projects. Such financing structures will reduce dependence on sovereign borrowing while creating sustainable investment platforms for long-term national development. A practical illustration is the proposed financing of the expansion and modernization of the airport through innovative investment structures that seeks to combine public oversight with private capital and expertise. Investment in ports, railways, highways, energy transmission, digital connectivity, and water infrastructure have multiplier effects across the entire economy. The lesson is clear. Strategic infrastructure investments create productive assets that generate economic value for many decades to come. Distinguished guests, an equally important component of national transformation is ensuring that government investments remain aligned with national priorities. Governments should not necessarily own enterprises where competitive private markets can deliver services more efficiently. Instead, governments should focus on sectors where public intervention creates strategic national value. Strategic divestiture, therefore, becomes an important policy tool in our transformation agenda. I therefore do urge our fellow brothers and sisters not to view government divestiture merely as disposal of assets, but rather it should be viewed as and understood as a portfolio reorganization and optimization which reallocates public capital from mature or non-strategic investments towards higher impact sectors capable of accelerating economic growth. Successful divestiture programs can unlock dormant assets, improve enterprise efficiency, broaden capital markets, attract strategic investors, strengthen corporate governance, and create physical space for new national priorities. The ultimate objective of ongoing efforts in this space is to ensure that every public investment contributes meaningfully to national wealth creation. Distinguished guests, investment alone does not guarantee transformation. Without strong governance, investment can easily become physical liabilities instead of productive assets. Good governance requires robust project appraisal, transparent procurement, professional state corporation boards, sound financial management, performance monitoring, accountability, and evidence-based decision-making. Kenya has made significant progress in strengthening governance frameworks for our state corporations and public enterprises. And a good example is, of course, what we have alluded to through the Government-Owned Enterprises Act of 2025, which introduced an ownership regime and legal framework that promotes better performance of the government-owned enterprises. However, reforms will only be sustained to improve, reforms will be sustained to improve efficiency, eliminate duplication, enhance accountability, and maximize returns on public investments. And these remain the core areas where the National Treasury has focused on. And these reforms, therefore, will ultimately give us better and high-performing state agencies and state corporations. We are pursuing national transformation in a world undergoing unprecedented change. Global economic fragmentation, geopolitical tension, climate change, supply chain disruptions, rising interest rates, technological disruption, and demography changes are redefining development pathways. Additionally, artificial intelligence, digitalization, and green technologies are rapidly changing patterns of production, investment, and employment, which therefore means the strategies that we also take in our transformation agenda must keep cognizant of these global changes that are currently impacting on all the strategies that nations continue to make. As Kenya charts its transformation journey, the government remains deliberate about deepening institutional reforms that improve investment, governance, and transparency. The government is maximizing implementation of the PPP framework while ensuring balanced risk allocation, transparency, and protection of public interest. We are further optimizing the government's investment portfolio through strategic restructuring, commercialization that is carefully considered and aimed at improving efficiency overall. Domestic resource mobilization is being strengthened while encouraging greater participation by pension funds and other big funds, giving them an opportunity to contribute to infrastructure development, where also gaining the returns that come from such investments. An example we have is the Nairobi-Nakuru Mau Summit, where we know institutions such as the NSSF have made investments in, as well as insurance companies and other local investors. Besides strong regional integration, we do seek strong regional integration as a key in expanding markets, improving competitiveness, and attracting greater investment into value-added industries. Similarly, we are also factoring climate resilience and sustainability in major investment decisions so that we make future infrastructure green, resilient, and inclusive. In conclusion, distinguished guests, Kenya possesses enormous potential. We have a dynamic private sector. We have a youthful, huge population. We have a strategic geographical positioning. We are strong in the region, and we therefore have strong regional influence. And we have a growing institutional capacity. We should therefore take this as advantages and realize therefore that the challenge before us is not the absence of opportunity, but it is how effectively we mobilize our capital, manage our assets, strengthen our institutions, and build partnerships capable of transforming opportunity into sustainable national wealth. Transformation therefore requires courage to reform, discipline to prioritize innovation to finance, and commitment to implement. The government remains committed to creating an enabling policy environment that encourages investment, enhances public asset performance, and strengthens partnership. Together, we can build an economy that is productive, competitive, resilient, and inclusive. And this, indeed, is what we seek to achieve through the conversations that we have today. I'm pleased for the opportunity to make these remarks on behalf of my Principal Secretary, and may God bless KSG.
Colleagues, let us give him another additional clap, kindly. Deep highlights. PPPs are working. And he has enumerated examples of public-private partnership. He underscores practically, even Safaricom, one of the largest companies in the East African region, has exemplified what can work. Can we have more replica of that to transit? He has emphasized intergenerational wealth, tying it to what his colleague indicated, We have intergenerational challenge. But we have intergenerational wealth. Where is it going to come from? He says productive national assets. Do we have a register of our strategic national assets that we should be able to transform? Where will the money come from? He has a strong conviction from the discussions and from what he has presented to us. The money and who will pay for it, it is known where it is going to come from. So what is stopping us from going to the first world? He says there is nothing, if we fix governance and undertake governance reforms in a more sober, realistic, and pragmatic manner. Lastly, he is inviting us to think best for our nation. If we think best for our nation, the solutions are not far away. Colleagues, let's tie that with global competitiveness. From our colleague, Ambassador Johnson Weru, so that we can then ask them the questions and comments that you have. So please, Ambassador. Yusuf, please proceed with the presentations, the Ambassador.
Good morning. Whoever is learning my presentation, this is an interactive session, and riding on the previous protocols established, I don't want to spend a lot of time on salutations. And since Wadera gave me 20 minutes, I'll use part of the 20 minutes to introduce myself and then do the presentation later. My name is Ambassador Johnson Weru. I'm many things to many people. First of all, we worked with Professor Nick Wajohi there as our boss. We've also worked with all these officers here. I served as Kenya's ambassador to the European Union based in Brussels and saw a lot of things there. I came back and served as the principal secretary in the State Department for Trade, and I'm now currently the secretary for partnerships in the State Department for East Africa on secondment from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If we can learn the first slide, the second slide, sorry. Those are salutations. Run the second slide. The second slide. Okay. The slide that I am pleading with the technology to learn is about how to manage public affairs. You cannot, for example, go to a shooting school and make yourself the target of the shooting lessons. Obviously, you'll die. And as the Americans say, if you are given 10 hours to cut a tree with a blunt axe, it's up to you to decide how to use that time. You can use 10 hours to struggle with the tree. You can use 8 hours to sharpen the axe and 2 hours to cut the tree. Or you can use any other innovative method, but you have 10 hours to cut the tree. So we have been given 60-something years as the Republic of Kenya to develop. And what we need to do is to ask ourselves, what have we done all that time and what can we learn from countries that were at the same level with us? We are going to see that later with the countries like South Korea, Vietnam, and so on. Next slide, please. The objectives of this presentation are basically to assess Kenya's current competitiveness to analyze the impact of infrastructure, digitization, to evaluate Kenya's innovation economic systems as competitiveness drivers, and formulate policy recommendations and sustainable competitiveness. We are going to see further what happens because my colleague Ishwara and Michael Kageka have actually covered this in greater detail. So can we go to the next slide? The challenges that we have to competitiveness, these ones have been talked about by the DG, electricity, fiscal pressures, the civil unrest, and you know today we are going through the Sabasaba experience. It's part of what affects our competitiveness, the weak interpretation of international law. Later on, I'll show you how clever interpretation of international law affects competitiveness. And I'll give you a few examples of countries that have used that example of clever application of international law to overcome the development challenges. Key areas for improvement include innovation. We have to innovate, as we'll see later. We have to have reliable energy. You cannot develop without a reliable energy process and production. You have to have a very strong regulatory environment. Very strong regulatory environment and reduce barriers to entry. And I'm happy that the examples given here by DG Kageka on the investments that we have in the PPP sector are kind of unlocking those potentials in the Mau Summit, Rironi Road, which I use every weekend on my way up country, the sale of Safaricom, the superhighway here that we have. I think those are examples that are very varied in overcoming the barriers because that connectivity is very important. Next slide. The potential benefits and obstacles for Kenya in leveraging for economic growth and trade and investment. Trade expansion is one of them. Trade expansion is very, very important for growth and competitiveness. You cannot grow by remaining at the same position. And I'm very happy that the government, successive governments since independence, have expanded trade, and you see how that has happened. With investment attraction, I have referred to the earlier presentations. Infrastructure development is another area that we have to pay attention to. The building of the SGR from Mombasa now on its way to Maraba, and the expansion of the corridor from Ramu to Juba. The digital economy is another area that we need to look into, and the challenges that we have. The challenges that we have to this road to competitiveness include rivalry with our neighbors, mainly from Tanzania and Ethiopia. Non-tariff barriers, these barriers placed by our trading partners to prevent or to keep away Kenyan goods, and you have seen the kind of barriers that have been placed on us to sell, even to establish ourselves in Ethiopia. For Safaricom to establish itself in Ethiopia, it started during our days with Professor Wanjohi, and it just came up just the other day, and with a very limited level of entry into Ethiopia. Non-tariff barriers, I talked about that. Infrastructure gaps, the kind of gaps that you are now seeing, the extension of the railway from Naivasha to Maraba and Kisumu, those are the gaps that we are trying as a government to fill in so that the connectivity can be complete. And from Maraba, we expect it to go all the way to Rwanda, through Uganda and Burundi, and on the other hand, through Juba to Douala in Cameroon, to complete the Trans-Africa Land Bridge from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. We have global dynamics, the shifting trade policies, the tensions between China and the US, the tensions between the US and Iran, the Ukraine, Russia. These are things that have happened at the international level and have affected the relations between the global economy and the small countries, small economies like Kenya and Africa in general, we are just pawns in that game. You've seen how fuel prices have shot up as a result of the conflict between Iran and the US, and that has affected generally. And I expected the DG for planning to speak to the effect of inflation on the competitiveness of Kenyan goods and services, and so on and so on. Next slide. So to recommend policy enhancements to suggest ways to strengthen Kenya's competitiveness, I think we need to integrate economic diplomacy into this process. By economic diplomacy, I mean turning out our diplomats into economic agents for the country. I'm a diplomat myself, and I do believe that nobody is best placed to sell Kenya other than our representatives out there. So whether you are dealing with whatever took you there as a representative of Kenya out there, first of all, you should know what Kenya stands for. As a mixed economy, we should be able to transform and sell Kenya effectively, which would strengthen institutional and regulatory coordination, strengthen the private sector, and the state corporations that are responsible for that. These are institutions like KEPROBA, Kenya Investment Authority, and so on. We must do trade promotion. You have seen how China has set itself up here with China shops all over. They are selling China goods. You hardly see anything. But why can't Kenya do that? Maybe the treasury guys who are here will tell us why. That's a question for them to answer during question time. Why haven't they allocated money for Kenya to sell its products out there if we have allowed Chinese to sell their products here? Maybe Mr. Kageka will tell us why. And if he tells us that there is no money, you know the answer. To enhance skills and capacity, and part of my pressure this morning to be here, I'm an alumni of KSG, the former KIA. I'm very happy to be here and to give back to this society of growing skills and capacity, to kind of make sure that we move this country forward and reach to the level that the president usually mentions of Singapore. It's not actually Kenya becoming like Singapore. It's making an approach towards there during our own lifetime. To leverage on digital diplomacy, you know how these US institutions, especially on services, things like MasterCard, CNN, all these things, they are the ones that have used that reach to sell their products, to sell their diplomacy, to sell their relations between us and them, and to engage the private sector more proactively, to partner with businesses for policy input and joint trade missions. Next slide. So I mentioned to you that we are going to look at clever application of international law. These are the examples that I have chosen. We have the TRIPS agreement. TRIPS agreement stands for Trade-Related Intellectual Property Rights. We have the Trade Facilitation Agreement and the Geographical Indication Strategy. Adela, if I have to make a request to you, is to allow me to learn these particular three examples in greater detail for the audience to understand what we mean by clever application of international law, because that is where we are going to overcome, according to me, and those who believe in economic transformation, how Kenya is going to transform itself from a developing economy to a developed economy. Next slide. The TRIPS agreement, this is Article 66.2 of the TRIPS agreement. And this is where countries like India made good use of their diplomats and intellectuals. This is the story of India, and that is how India became a leading economy. In 2001, there was a ministerial conference in Doha after the failed one in Seattle. And at that time, the Kenya trade minister was Nicholas Biwott. So all these things that made the Seattle meeting fail were discussed in Doha in 2001. And India sponsored a motion in the conference to ask how long should a patent be. So the developed countries indicated that the lifespan of a patent is 10 years. And from that point to 2011, India invested in setting up industries to produce generic medicines. It went back to the UN and came up with a resolution in the UN to make all medicines available for children, especially vaccines. Children below 5 years should be given free vaccines. And that is why you find these vaccines being supplied by the government free. They are not free. They are bought from India and other countries that produce these generic medicines. And that is how India became one of the richest countries by producing generic medicines. That's a proper, a clever application of international law. This next slide. The next slide is about the trade facilitation agreement. The trade facilitation agreement for which I participated in its negotiation is a piece of international law that provides for assistance to landlocked countries to access the seaports. So all what you are seeing in terms of development for the Mombasa port, the railway line to Maraba and so on, is to facilitate the landlocked countries, the ones that don't have seaports. Countries like South Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda, they are benefiting from that piece of international law. And it allows countries with sea access to provide intermediate process for that. So what have they done? These countries have used that part of international law to ask Kenya to build the Northern Corridor for them. And that is why they are co-investors in the Northern Corridor. And I hope Bwana Kageka, you tell us why Uganda is not an investor in the Rironi Mau Summit Road. They should be under international law. They should cost share because they are also customers. They should not tell you that we are going to pay for toll money. That is for us. But under international law, we are allowed by Article, I think Article 12 of the Trade Facilitation Agreement to ask donors to supply us with money. And that is why there is that text in lead to alert our experts here to look at that part of international law and go knocking on the donors' doors and ask them for resources to complete that road from Mau Summit to Maraba and Kisumu. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, the TRIPS agreement. I have talked about India and what it did in Doha and in the subsequent meetings. And you see India in the subsequent meetings in Indonesia and in Argentina, of which I was lucky to be there as Kenya's ambassador. It actually campaigned vigorously among developing countries to reduce or eliminate export subsidies for agricultural products. We won in Indonesia but lost the battle in Argentina because the Europeans argued that there is no value in eliminating agricultural subsidies because they were going to lose their identity as Europeans. You can imagine what these Europeans do. They only receive these goods when they are not able to produce theirs. They receive our flowers, they receive our green and the horticultural exports only in summer, only in winter. But during summer, because they're able to produce theirs, they have those policies that are used by international law to prevent exports from developing countries. And that is why, if you don't listen to me, you will remain poor for a very long time. Next. The biofuel case of Indonesia. Indonesia wanted to export a biofuel to the EU, and the EU refused. And what happened after that was for the EU and Indonesia to sue each other. The case was decided by the WTO court sitting in Geneva. We were invited as observers to that particular venture, and we are looking for investors actually because we have a trade agreement with EU to export biofuel. Biofuel is the one made from biodiesel, is the one made from agricultural products. And Kenya has a production facility. It's only that our farmers are looking at other cash crops like coffee, tea, and so on. But one of the products that can transform this economy is the production of biofuel. If the one running the technology, if you can learn that particular slide, no. That one that is highlighted. If you can open it, Wadera had promised me that you'll do it. But if you have challenges, anyway, what there is that Indonesia sued the EU, and the EU lost that case, and so on, and therefore Indonesia has full access of its biofuel to the EU market. Next slide. That's the biofuel ruling. That's an example of the biofuel and the ruling that you can find in that link. If Wadera is okay with this, he can circulate this presentation to the delegates here. Next slide. That is clever application of international law. And you see, this is the ruling against U.S. nuclear reactor companies. And Korea got that technology and learned how to make a nuclear reactor and competed with American companies to make a nuclear reactor. There was a $18 billion contract in the Czech Republic, and the Koreans won. So when the Koreans won that particular tender, they took each other to court, the WTO court, and believe you me, Koreans won. So I'm assuming, next slide. Yes, that is the 18.2 billion nuclear facility in the Czech Republic. And therefore, suppose Kageka, we decided to build nuclear reactors here. And I am hoping that when Professor Wajohi takes the floor, he'll talk about that because he has a PhD in, let me not talk about my former boss. So now, that is the nuclear reactor that the Koreans won against the Americans, and they got a lot of money. Imagine $18.2 billion entering Kenyan economy. And why can't we build a nuclear reactor? Who said no? We have the capacity. We have the engineers, we have the scientists, we have the formulas. Tuko na maneno hapa. So, next slide. The Brazil cotton case. Brazil sued the U.S. Because the U.S. was subsidizing its farmers, and it won the case, and that is why Brazil took off from a developing country. It is now a developed country. After the victory in the WTO, the transformation of its agricultural sector and its manufacturing sector led to the kind of growth in the economy that Kenya is aspiring to become, and started producing light aircraft. You know, these Embraers. This also started producing weapons, tanks, and so on, and guns. I'm not a military officer, but I know Brazilian armory is one of the best in the world. So those are examples of international law that is applied affirmatively and economically to the interest of the country. Proceed, next slide. The geographical indications. This is a very important piece of international law for which Kenya can adopt, and it talks about geographical indications. I know most of you know champagne, the wine called champagne. Champagne is not a cheap wine. It's very expensive. is made out of grapes grown in southern France, and it's only that France applied international law affirmatively. There's nothing special about champagne at all, at all, at all, at all. It is expensive because the French have made it so and applied pieces of international law to take advantage of that wine that they make. It is named after a small city, a very small city in southern France. Next slide. What actually are we saying here? Mr. Technology, if you can take the last link and open it for me, I'll be very happy as I conclude this particular presentation. The last bullet, cut that and make it active. Mexico and the EU have signed a trade agreement recently, and the EU has, those of you who drive around Nairobi, you know this interchange around Museum Hill. Eh? Have you seen that big billboard selling or advertising Jack Daniels and the Tennessee whiskey? Eh? Despite the government of Kenya protesting against advertisement for alcohol, it can do nothing about it because that is part of geographical indications law. You can't see such a billboard for usual Tusker here. But they have allowed us to advertise Jack Daniels and the Tennessee whiskey. These are products designated as geographical indications products. So, soga kubere kidogo bwana. Up again. I want to show you what up again. Endelea kidogo, endelea. Hapo, simama hapo. If you can expand it a bit for the audience to see what the EU has done, it has tricked Mexico. And Mexico has found itself in a situation, and I'm preparing you for this because if it happens with your neighbor, ukiona mwenzako kimenyolewa, jitayarishe. So these countries have each chosen, there are 27 countries in the EU, and each country has chosen one agricultural product. The country that I served called Belgium, you see there, there in the middle, there's Belgium. They have chosen Gabon. Gabon is pork. They are going to promote pork. The entire market in Mexico is 4.2 billion euros. 4.2 billion euros. All these products, Slovenia has, Spain has chosen Loja, Poland has chosen Vodka, Lithuania has chosen Vodka. All these are agricultural products, believe you me, or made out of agricultural materials. And they have entered Mexico. They are soon going to the NAFTA countries, the USMCA, the US, Canada, the Mexico. Then they are coming to Africa through the ACFTA. So when you see them coming to sell pork, it's up to Kenya's diplomats to prevent the entry of pork, to protect pork farmers in Kenya. If we are not careful, they will enter through that door and our pork and the poultry industries will collapse because obviously these things are cheaper, they are subsidized, and there's nothing you can do. Let's proceed to the next slide. I hope you are getting the picture, the clever application of international law. Proceed to the next slide. So what has Kenya done? Very late in the day, the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has woken up. Can you open the first link that you see there? Honorable Kenyajui has finally decided to listen to us, finally, and made 2 pieces of registration on geographical indications. There's a bill coming up in Parliament because you cannot apply geographical indications law if you don't have domestic law. So that is what the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Investment, where I worked previously, and expand it a bit. That's just an illustration that the government is trying to transform the economy. The government is trying to make sure that every available opportunity is utilized. So they have made that particular bill. It is undergoing public participation, and soon I'm meeting the speaker tomorrow. I will lobby him so that this bill can pass through Parliament, and then we can apply the geographical indications facility under international law for the benefit of Kenya's economy. Next slide. So we'll not see the next tweet by CS Kenyanjui, but it's about the same thing. It's about intellectual property and coming into force using the WIPO provisions. Next slide. Those are the products we have listed as experts on what Kenya can sell under geographical indications. Products like tea, and I'm very happy with the Equity Bank. It has pioneered that process of marking tea, Kenyan tea, as a special geographical indication product. The farmers growing tea will get a lot of money for the same effort. That's the principle. Coffee, the peanut butter from Homa Bay, the Kipingi peanut butter. It's a very, very sweet piece of peanut butter. Kitui and Koliema honey. The last time when I was in KSG, was it KSG Kabarnet or KSG Baringo, I saw Koliema. Those guys who sell honey along the route, they should be assisted actually. And if you are from Baringo and you want to fix your governor, Mwabia Nione, because this is a low-hanging fruit really. There is the macadamia nuts and so on and so on. These are the products we have listed as experts in terms of transforming the economy and transforming Kenya to make sure it gets closer to where Korea and Singapore are. Next slide. This is President Ruto's dream of transforming Kenya through infrastructure. And these are the roads that are set for dueling. If your county is not in this Ruto's map, you need to engage him. You need to engage him because this is the government plan, according to DG Ishiara here. The government is planning long-term to dualize those roads and create the connectivity and create the competitiveness that I talked to earlier. Next slide. These are the ports. The ports are very important. Next slide. You may think that Mombasa is the is the biggest port in the region. It is not. It is actually number 4 in Africa. The largest port is in Morocco, followed by Egypt, followed by Durban, and followed by Mombasa. And you can see Morocco is handling about 10.24 20-foot equivalent units of containers. 10.24 when Mombasa is handling 2.11. So to Nyuma Kidogo, Egypt, it has 2 ports, Port of Port Said and Port Alexandria. Both are handling about 5-point-something million TEUs. The next one in terms of size of handling cargo is Lome in Togo and Abidjan, Ivory Coast, handling 2.06. Next slide. All is not bad. So in the region, we are the leading. with Dar es Salaam following and Djibouti in cruise. So what we are saying, to possession Kenya, you must move in all directions. All these containers don't go to Kenya, they go to the hinterland countries, to Uganda, to Rwanda, to Burundi, and South Sudan, and also southern Ethiopia. Those are the kind of connections that we need to trade, to transport goods and services, and to improve our infrastructure. The next slide. That is the digital economy, the fiber optic cables that we have. And you can see the concentration is around Western Africa. Not much around East Africa, but we are trying. But in terms of effective internet coverage, we are leading in Africa. So that is something that the Kenya government should take pride in. And they sing its song without kidogo. So if the Ministry of Information was here, I would want them to sing much more about our internet connectivity. Next slide. These are just examples of how our country is doing compared to the countries that we aspire to be. Singapore has 13.3 gigawatts of energy, while Kenya has about 3 point something gigawatts. Munaona tuko nyuma kidogo. So countries like Morocco has 12, Nigeria has 4, Vietnam has 86, and Indonesia has 103, South Korea 153, and India has 505. India was a very poor country 50 years ago. Brazil was a very poor country 50 years ago. It has now 223 gigawatts of energy. That is the transformation that we are looking for. If Kenya is going to develop, we must have approximately 15. So, Mr. Ishiara, in your planning projections, you must plan for power, production, and don't be ready to. Nuclear is the way to go. One nuclear reactor will produce 10 gigawatts of energy. And therefore, to make one gram of steel or iron, you need 10 gigawatts. And that is why we have not utilized our iron deposits in Mulima Hills and other places that are rich in iron. We only export raw iron to other countries that have more energy than we do. Next slide. Therefore, unless we trade seriously with our neighbors, and we have these regional economic blocks like ECOWAS, COMESA, SADC, and so on, we are not going to go far. EU trades 70% among themselves, and Africa trades only 16%. Therefore, we need about 54% to mark up to reach up to the EU, 70 minus 16. So, tuko na njia ndefu sana ya kupitia. As I conclude, next slide. The ACFT agreement, that is something that you may read, but Article 4 of the ACFTA provides for how to protect the African market. How to protect the African market. How to operate just like the EU. You cross all the borders to all the goods and services, and first of all, allow member countries to trade among themselves. That is the only way Kenya can develop, according to me, and that is the only way Africa can move forward with Kenya in the lead. Next slide. So these are countries with data there. And one of the things that I wish I spoke yesterday, I would have wanted somebody to tell me why. Why, for example, would Egypt buy $90 million worth of milk from Germany? The leading exporter of milk to Egypt is Germany. Why? The data is there. And why should Ethiopia import things like milk from Malaysia, sorry?
How can you allow that to happen? There's some weakness in the system. And those are the gaps that we need to close. We need to close those gaps and make sure that they work to the advantage of the economy. And I know Professor Ajohi will speak to that. Next slide. Those are the negotiations that I've been involved in as part of my public life. If I had time, I would talk to them. I would talk to the EAC, EU, EPA, the Kenya-US, for which Professor Ajohi was a good guide to it, and so on and so on. Next slide. These are the comparisons of what services provide in the economies of several countries. USA, 77% of the GDP comes from services, not manufacturing. Not manufacturing. And Kenya, we are at manufacturing is 80%. So 8% of our GDP comes from manufacturing. When President Ruto took office, he promised Kenyans that he remove manufacturing contribution to GDP to 20%. So that is one of the things that we are taking upon him. And we should be ready to assist him realize that particular thing. Even if he doesn't hit 20%, these guys in the office of the president should tell us exactly where we are, because that is a promise he made to Kenyans, moving the ratio of manufacturing to GDP to 20%. The policy recommendations are given there. We must leverage on clever international of application, clever application of international law, because when you don't apply international law to your advantage as an economy, other countries have done it. That is the way Vietnam, Korea, Thailand, Brazil, all these examples I've given you. Anywhere in the world, a country that was previously least developed, that was previously developing and is now developed, they have been able to move forward to where they are because of the clever application of international law. Let nobody lie to you that there is a country in the world that has developed out of developing agriculture. Hakuna. I've never seen one. So you concentrate on manufacturing and services. That is the way to grow. That is the way to grow. And if you don't apply international law, you can't buy and sell everything. You cannot produce everything and buy it yourself. Others must buy from you and you make a profit out of it. Last slide. So if you are a Kenyan today, how would you praise yourself? Are you the zebra, the lion? That's a question we shall discuss during the tea break. The next slide. So the takeaways, as I conclude, the greatest interest is the Republic of Kenya. Have national interest. If I had time, I would have talked to you about what constitutes national interest. But briefly, national interest is basically what rounds up the Republic of Kenya. Why are you a Kenyan in the first place? We have seen what South Africans have done to us. Huh? Would you like such a thing to happen here? In fact, I'm very angry with those South Africans. Ni watu wajinga sana. How can they chase away their fellow Africans? How? And you are living in rented apartments owned by other people. Bure kabisa. Being clever, be clever, being clever. That's the answer. Being clever. All these countries you see, they are very small, but they have, you know, the country I served as an ambassador is the size of Tana River County. A country that is so wealthy, it has no gold, it has no oil. Belgium, the size of Tana River County, twice the size of Turkana County. So don't say that we are overpopulated or whatever. It's only that we need to organize ourselves a bit. And what the president is doing is to organize us to become exactly productive and transformative and competitive. You need to understand the rules of the game. You cannot enter a game and then you score against yourself. Ni country gani ilijifunga goli? Wadera. There was a team that scored. Oh, you're not watching the World Cup. You must understand the rules of immigration. As always, you must, as a diplomat, negotiate for your country. And you must know your customer. You must know your customer. KYC. Know your customer. Who are you selling to? What are you selling? And are you aware of the environment in which you are doing business? And finally, network with the right people. I'm sure here we'll make new contacts and so on and so on. And then once you are working with the right people, and working with the right people simply means working with like-minded people. Don't work with the people who are retrogressive, people who take you 2 steps backwards and 1 step forward. No. Work with the right people. So good people, thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm happy to take questions at the appropriate time. Shukran.
Colleagues, you would agree with me, Johnson has a lot of experience and hands-on in this area with a lot of detail. Be of clever mind. If you want global competitiveness, it is cleverness of international law in your foundation sectors and things that you can sell to the next neighbor out of your country that will matter. And there are a lot of opportunities. It's like asking us to take a strategic sit-in with Johnson, list down our strategic foundation resources and say of this one which is more priority to take advantage of. Sincerely, si honey tu ya Koriema, na si majani chai tu, na si coffee tu. Kenya is endowed with a lot of resources. And if we took opportunity to be clever, we could sell it to Uganda and we could sell it to the 8 African countries significantly, which we are not doing now. So thank you very much, colleagues. From my senior DG, my other senior DG, and my senior here, Ambassador, it is a good opportunity before we break for tea break that we now interact with you. And we interact in the sense that you made the request yourself. It wasn't me. You said, wacha watu wa present alafu mutawa engage. Madam, you spoke for the rest of us. So can we go without much ado? Let us have the questions, the comments, the observations that you have for this panel. Have we pieced together the policy shifts necessary to take Kenya to a first world country status in our lifetime? In, say, less than 30 years. Those who did it within 30 years, can we beat them and do it in 25 years? And if so, what are your questions to enrich what the rapporteurs have picked while these ones were speaking? So proceed, Mami. And you can borrow from the mic. If all the mics are here, we can give you an additional mic.
We'll move them around.
All right.
Maybe
all right.
As we wait, a summary, if we can get another mic maybe on that side for ease of movement. I have, it's like an observation, a question to Ambassador Weru. You talked about the need to be clever. And it seems like a lot of conversations are edging on us being competitive in the space of exporting, whether it is services, whether it is products. But I'm also looking at a situation, could we be also developing a situation in the future, in the near future, where all of our agricultural land is occupied with products for export? And what does that mean in terms of food sovereignty for this country? Because Africa's competitiveness is land and water. We have a third of the world's arable land. We have a third of the freshwater reserves, which a lot of these developed countries have either overused, overconsumed, or abused. So we are going to be, people say, I'm not beating the war drums, but that the next war will be fought on the basis of access to fresh water. So are we also developing at the expense of the environment, which we need to sustain ourselves? And also, how can we safeguard our interests when we're being clever? Because based on what you have shared, these developed countries, these laws are working better for them because they already have the ecosystem in their countries to support them. If we do not have, and we get into this game, Are we not scoring against ourselves because they have access to come here easily, but our access to theirs is limited? So that's my question / opinion. We'll pass the mic round. We'll take the first 10 questions. So where do we start?
Thank you. Thank you, Gerald and team. My name is Isaac Eregai from County Government of Turkana, a graduate of LPNT cohort number 2. My 2 questions. Number 1, it is said it takes 2 to tango, and thereby in the process towards the Great Leap, it takes both county and national government to realize the same. Insofar as policy is concerned, I wish to ask the panel on policy recommendation on the role of the Senate, particularly on the officer's responsibility in pushing counties to realize the Great Leap. Counties provide an opportunity, or their hubs, for global competitiveness. Number 2, and the last one, National Treasury has a responsibility on implementation of systems for purposes of project implementation from national to counties. But today, 14 years or 13 after devolution, we still do not have systems in counties for purpose of public investment management. As of today, we still have funding from World Bank through KDSP2, but still we are experiencing challenges in monitoring and evaluation on public investment. Where is the challenge? What is the limitations within the mandates of Treasury? And what is its scope? Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panelists. My name is David Waga from the National Treasury, and I wish to join the conversation by appreciating the fact that there was a point mentioned by my boss, the DG for Economic Planning, that one of the shifts that we need to make is reactive. We move away from reactive planning to predictive planning. So I've picked this one only because it's something that I want to associate with, and it's one of those things we've been trying to advocate for in the public service. And this is why I did pick it, because there are practical examples, but because of time, allow me to pick just 2 to illustrate this. One, just a few months ago when we had to deal with floods in Nairobi, one of the leadership stood on TV and said that I'm really not to blame. It is because Nairobi's drainage system was meant for just a few of you. I think the figure was less than 1 million. And now we have 5 million people in Nairobi, and even more during the day. The second example is the project we are very proud of, especially those of us who come from the western side of the country, the Rironi Mau Summit project. We really appreciate it. But again, it's not being done because of the traffic analysis that needed to have been done earlier. It is being done because of the nights we have spent on that road, especially during December holidays. And so you can see the reactive planning in its practicality. As we speak now, the available evidence show that Kenya, our urban population, the growth rate is one of the highest in the world. There are some documents talking about 2.9, some up to 3 point something. Already, this data is available, and you can see what is happening in our urban centers and especially Nairobi. So my question is to the DG, what is the level of preparedness? Because I am happy that for change to happen, one of the ingredients you need, either as a person, as an institution, or as a nation, is some level of dissatisfaction so that you change. Much as you need to have a desired state, you also need some level of dissatisfaction that I really don't want to be where I am. So with that, what is the level of prepared? How are we preparing to be able to shift from the reactive planning that we really know to predictive planning? Thank you.
The ladies are quiet. 2/3 gender rule, I apply KSG. It doesn't have to be a question, it can be a comment, it can be an observation. But as we wait for the ladies to speak up, we have a gentleman.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. David Serkod from the Kenya School of Government. I want to appreciate the presenters for a well-thought presentation. And I want, number one, to assure Ambassador Weru that I was listening very carefully, not to remain poor. And I want to address the issue of diplomats. And you mentioned about training the diplomats on trade, investment, and digital economy, for them to be our ambassadors on trade. The question that I want to ask is, and never mind the people we pick to represent us as ambassadors and high commissioners in our foreign offices. But the question is, do we really have a deliberate program that can provide induction to these ladies and gentlemen who are picked, so that at the end of the day, they're able to appreciate the trade, investment, and digital economy, and therefore be able to help us on the same? And number two is their engagement having a KPI on the value of trade that they give us at the end of the day? The second question I want to ask is to our DG, Public Investment and Asset Management. We are aware that the fiscal space has shrunk over time due to heavy debts that we've taken as a country. And therefore, Kenyan government today is tinkering on PPPs, NIF, or a National Infrastructure Fund, securitization, wealth fund, and so on and so forth. And from where I sit, we suffer from public trust deficit to the extent that any proposal that has been tested elsewhere finds itself in a litigation in our courts. And the tragedy is that our experts are so good. When we come for conventions like this, we see the light and we see the focus, and we appreciate. But then in a village burial ceremony, a politician who has had nothing to do with economics will just wake up, pick the microphone, and he spins the whole thing into a different thing. To the extent that the experts in the house we've been having cannot give a rebuttal on the same, yet they know it's a political deceit in trying to mislead the public. So the question I'm asking is, what can we do differently as experts to ensure that we address this issue, so that when we give policy statements, when we talk about PPPs on this, and in fact you mentioned, Weru, about the way we must go nuclear in terms of power, which is indeed the best way to do. But I know there are attempts in most parts of the country that want to do. The latest is in Siaya, but people have gone to court through activists and the rest. Yet us, as the experts, we are not able to move to the podium and give a blow-by-blow account of how this thing is going to work. So what's our role? What should we do differently to ensure that we minimize litigation in this space and ensure that we drive the economy in that kind of shifting of our minds? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the session. My name is Sheila Sifuma from County Assembly of Bungoma. And I think my question was half mentioned by my colleague just from speaking. And my concern was maybe to Ambassador, now that you've been in different countries and you have a lot of experience. in terms of litigation as this country. And from the space that we serve in, Kenya is a highly litigious country. And everything that His Excellency tries to do lands him in court in one way or another. It has its benefits, definitely, because it means we are a woke nation. But then again, it has its limitations. So maybe what have other countries done, according to you, to be able to navigate through that path? Because at the end of the day, I think we saw like the airport, at some point there was a renovation plan, and the Adani, it was just a complicated mess. They said they have court cases. Then later on, they were cleared even in the US. Then now where do we stand? Because such cases are already in court and they have been ruled against locally. And also on the same breath, in terms of the other countries in comparison to our country, many times the public servants and the elites or the educated people in a country tend to shy away from political participation and politics and governance. Maybe your experience across board, what are other countries doing? Because we are leaving our politics, we are leaving our governance to people who don't have the information, to people who have not, have not learned and known the skills around it. So maybe you can guide on that. Thank you very much.
Good morning. First, I want to appreciate the organizers for this high policy dialogue on building national wealth and global competitiveness. My challenge to it is about digital transformation. We are in that digital transformation era. And this question is directed to Mr. Chwara of Ministry of Planning. Distinguished panel, while the bottom-up economic transformation prioritize productivity at grassroots level, there is a global shift towards AI-driven service delivery. Especially to be more specific in public sector, how can the Kenyan public service balance the aggressiveness adoption of AI technologies with the necessary skills enhancement of public workforce, and how do we ensure that the perceived ease of use for common citizen, that is Mama Mboga and the Boda people, also the ultimate beneficiary of bottom-up economic transformation agenda, does not become a new digital barrier that contradicts our goals of inclusive economic growth. And then the second part of it is, if we view AI as a catalyst for efficiency, should we prioritize AI administrative back office automation to reduce taxpayers' cost, or in front-end service delivery to increase citizen participation in the economy? Thank you.
Let's take a pause. We get the panelists to answer the questions. I know we had said 10, and some of you have asked 2, so in essence, I am keeping my word. And then we'll see if we'll come back for another round of questions.
And it is at the center, Michael or Chwara. We can start with Johnson, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much, panelists. The madam, I didn't get your name. You? No, this lady.
Oh, Resian.
Yeah?
Resian.
Okay. You asked about the cleverness, the competitiveness, and agricultural exports. That is why I brought about the issue of geographical indications. The same effort, more money. Don't be don't be worried that the agricultural areas are being taken up by buildings. To me, that is not a problem. Those ones that are remaining, if the coffee farmer or the rice farmer in Ahero can get more money by getting more affirmative government action, by our brothers here in Treasury, preventing those traderpreneurs from importing rice when we have already rice farmers growing their own rice at which we cannot consume locally. So we need to kind of get more of such affirmative government actions that will give the producers more money and more markets and more opportunities for the same effort. For the same effort. And value addition is one important venture that we can get into. I am very happy that the government is investing in milk coolers. In the countries that I have been to, the one I know best, milk farmers do this. They combine technology and agriculture. All the milk processors go on auction every evening. Every evening at around 9, they go on auction. So if it is Brookside or KCC or Tuzo or whatever it is, they go to the auction, the farmers auction their milk, and they sell to the highest paying processor. So the one who buys the highest gets the milk. And in terms of transport and logistics, you are not going to second guess how much milk you are going to deploy the lorry that transports that milk into about 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever it is. So the effort by the Kenya government to provide coolers for the farmers. And if there's anybody here in Orokarau, those things that are being given, one of them should be the milk coolers. Because they are going to transform the economy of those people. They are milk producers. That is the way to transform the economy, by being proactive, by giving these people intermediate goods. My brother from Turkana, I said Turkana is twice the size of Belgium. Belgium is 30,000 square kilometers around there. And Turkana is over 70,000 square kilometers. You have no problem whatsoever in Turkana, at all, at all, at all, at all. The buck stops with you. You don't have to blame anybody. If you look at the amount of money you've been given since devolution started, you need to show us where you have taken that money. You need to show us what you've done with the money to transform the, and I come from the neighboring county of Laikipia. I know. So if we are going to face each other, mundu kumundu, we should be as forthright as possible. Let us not blame the leaders. Let us not blame the government. Let us engage the experts where possible, and let us also deal with this problem as a community called Kenyans. And therefore, I slightly disagree with your proposal for what the Senate should do. The people of Turkana, and I have relatives there, should somehow try and utilize the resources that are there, reduce the war that you have with your neighbors there, transform your economies, and use geographical indications to grow more honey around the areas around Lake Barigo, if you want to develop and get more money for the same effort. For the speaker who asked about the training of diplomats, I would want to respond as follows. There is the national paper that was passed by Parliament and created the sessional paper on the Foreign Service, and that paper created the Foreign Service Academy. And I'm happy Professor Ajohi Adai started the Foreign Service Academy. It is where we are training these ambassadors as they move out, and not just before posting, even during posting and after posting, because we need to document their experiences. We also need to arm them with clever application of international law. You don't expect an ambassador to carry a bag of coffee
and enter a supermarket like a salesman. That is not economic diplomacy. That ambassador must be equipped about what the law of that country says, what are the healthy standards, and what are the entry and the exit barriers of the products that he is going to promote. What is Kenya good at? An ambassador should be good at that, knowing what we are there to do and what other countries are doing to promote the same. And that is why I'm of the view that as the bill in Parliament considers to reduce the percentage of political appointees to maybe 30%. And if I was to vote, I would vote for it, except that I am not there already, and I have no reason to go there anyway. That is the response I can give for the arming of diplomats. And in Kenya's diplomacy, we have 4 sections of diplomats. We have the attachés that come from various institutions, from the intelligence to agriculture to education and so on. All of them represent Kenya. They wear Kenyan flag. They should be armed with sufficient information on what to say about their country. When they reach there, they are not segregated to say, oh, I only deal with education. Oh, I only deal with health. Oh, no. If you are a diplomat, you are a diplomat. You represent the country. Sheila, litigation is good, and it's very healthy. But there's one limit to litigation. That's why you have the judiciary as a third arm of the government. And that is why you have the constitution. Let me tell you, where I served as ambassador, there was even a political party with a manifesto for the breakup of Belgium. It had 2 MPs. But how have they succeeded? No. Because the greater masses are against those ideas. So let Kenyans litigate, let governments do what it has to do. It has experts like me who are going to advise on how to circumvent this litigation. And that is why you've seen there's no single major government investment that has not been taken to court. Hakuna, in my living memory. And these Kenyans who make money out of litigating in government, they are funded by external people. There's no Kenyan who will earn his salary like you and me and use part of that salary to hire a lawyer and take it to court. Because you are not interested in another airport, you are serving foreign masters. Those are agents of confusion. We should just do away with them or let them litigate in court. Government should do what it has to do. And then finally, digital transformation. Digital transformation is the way to go for Kenya, as far as I'm concerned. I have shown you that map. The digital submarines are there. Let us use it. If there's one thing that I'm proud of as a diplomat, talking about my country, is the way we have been able to transform Kenya through M-Pesa. It is a digital-based facility and have brought about over 90% of Kenyans in the financial grouping. So now, even taxes are being paid through. Those of us who surrendered who returned their taxes to KRA, didn't you find it easier this time? Huh? There was just an SMS. You just said your PIN in there. The KRA has your ID, it has your PIN. Within a second, I had filed my returns. That is digital transformation. And I should urge KRA to punish those people who don't file their returns heavily. And also mark them. They should not be allowed to vote. If they have not filed their returns, they should not be allowed to vote. That's my personal view and a private view. Thank you, Mr. Wadera.
Thank you very much. I think our constitution, let me start from our constitution. We have given ourselves a very strong constitution, but I think it's so strong that development might not be easy. Singapore did not develop because they were democratic. They developed because somebody would say we need to move, and they moved. Of course, litigation, if I can start from there, and of course what Ambassador Wawera said, is because we do not put evidence on everything that we do. If we were using evidence,
then I think much of the litigation will not be there, because of course in the constitution, the articles of where that we need to give information to the public becomes very critical. So as a government, of course, we have that problem. Now let me answer a few questions from Isaac from Turkana. I think why the role of Senate to push counties. I think one of the problems we have as a country is that we are not transparent and accountable. Nobody wants to be transparent. Nobody wants to be accountable. The governors who are in charge of the county governments are supposed to be accountable to the Wanjiku in their own constituents. They do not require the Senate to come and push them to do what they are supposed to do. But if then, as Kenyans, we cannot be able to do that, then it becomes very difficult for us to transform. So transformation now, in the next, I hope the next long-term plan that we are thinking about, we must think about accountability and transparency. But of course, the word that we always avoid is governance issues. As a country, we have governance issues. Everybody wants to do things on their own. I think I was reading some book and I was told, or some story from somebody. He said in Brazil that he was staying, I don't know, in a 28th floor hotel. And from there, a police officer, I think, I saw a police officer. And they said that in Brazil, traffic lights are working. There are no policemen on the road. And at night, when traffic was not so much, he wanted to find out whether the Brazilians were obeying the traffic rules. And he saw one person, one vehicle on the road. And when the light became red, the vehicle stopped. How many Kenyans can do that in Nairobi? When it's red, it's when we move, isn't it? Yes, we need that accountability. So the TNT, of course, the Constitution has given the national and the county governments what they need to do. The national government is supposed to lead in terms of policy and, of course, capacity building. And these policies are supposed to make us, as a country, that all the counties can follow in one policy, standardized, or systems that are standardized. From the National Treasury, we have trained many counties in terms of M&D, in terms of what they need to do. What is the challenge? The challenge still remains that we don't want to be accountable and transparent. M&D is about accountability. M&D is about transparency. How can we be able to make our governors and, of course, the team at the county level to be that? I'm not saying that the national government is more accountable and transparent. We have problems in both levels of government. Majority of us do not want to be transparent and accountable. Of course, my friend David Waga, a colleague from the National Treasury, of course, you have given very good examples, but let me give an example on reactive and reactive and predictive planning. Singapore, that we talk about, was applying fuel when we had the recent oil shocks. It's not that Singapore are producers of any oil, but they have made it that they have enough storage for oil that lasts their country a number of years. And now, when they thought that the number of years are, even if they removed all their reserves for 6 months, to leave it for 6 months, they had enough to supply to other countries. So during these the Iran and the US conflict, Singapore was supplying oil to other countries. In Kenya, we are told, and of course, having worked in the Ministry of Energy, and I was putting figures down that we have 3 months cover for oil. I think when we realized last time, we could not go for 1 month without oil. So we need to now start asking ourselves, what should have happened if the conflict progressed longer? So what should Kenya do in terms of our storage, our reserves for everything? So we must be able to plan ahead. We must, as I said earlier, we must look at technologies that are coming into. We must look at what we need in the future, not what we need today. And therefore, we must plan better. Are we prepared? I think, let me put this question to each one of us. Are we prepared as a country for any change that we need? I think the answer is no. But how do we need to be prepared? Then we must sit down as a country and delineate our future that we want. That the future that we want, we must work with everyone. What we are doing at the State Department for Economic Planning for the next long-term plan, we want to talk to everybody in Kenya, to the Wanjikus on the ground. We want to start from the ward level and ask ourselves, where do we want to be when we attain 100 years, the same years that the school here is celebrating? What were the people in 1930 who came to this school were expecting this school to be today? Of course, I know all of them are not alive, isn't it? But they had a vision, that this school becomes what it is today. So I think I will leave my colleague from PIM to discuss about PIM and of course the systems for project implementation and management, or of course public investment and management at the county level, and if they have got everything. But I think something that I need to add is that evidence decision making is not available in Kenya. There is evidence, but people are not using the evidence to make decisions. Our colleague who talked about digital transformation, he didn't say his name, but I think when computers were coming, we were told that jobs were going to be lost. But I don't know whether jobs were lost because computers came. I'm told from one of the main technology firms in the US, they realized that with use of AI, reduced the human resource department, but it increased the investment of the firm. They needed more technology-based people. They needed more engineers instead of human resource. And of course, when we are going to use more digital transformation, we're going to make our work easier. Imagine those of us who used, I don't know, Prof, during your time, how you used to send money. When you went to school, how your parents used to send money for your fare. But I know mine used to send me through what they used to call money order. How many of us saw money order? Yes. And the money order would reach or not reach. They will not know whether you received or not received. They will not know that you will be coming home or not coming because you received the money or you did not receive the money. Now M-Pesa has come and transactions are instant. We have improved that. In our next long-term plan, technology has been put as one of our core pillars, that we must transform this country using technology. The farmers do not need to start selling their produce in the US by going to the US. They should sell their wares, the mamambogas. They should sell their mamamboga or the koriyama. Is it koriyama you call it? Koriyama or koriyama honey. They should sell it from where they are seated to the US. They don't need to go to the US. The buyer in the US should be able to see how the honey is being processed in real time so that they can trust the processes. I think it's not about end or back or front end or back to office performance, but we need that everybody must need to use this technology. But what do we need to do? Of course, our population currently is it's literate. I think our literacy levels in Kenya are around 90%. In a few years, we'll be almost 100% literate. And everybody can be able to use a computer or a gadget that can transform their lives. Thank you very much.
Very well. Thank you. So I think, in the same words of my brother, I think for Isaac from Turkana on the issue of investments in counties, it's true that under our devolved system, counties at the fore for investments and growth at the county level. And I think in the same manner, and both Ambassador Wero and my brother from planning have talked to it. The Constitution did assign the two laws of the two levels of government, and so counties have a clear responsibility on what they must do in order to ensure that there is the growth intended and the investments in the counties. Now, for the National Treasury, the obligations are also clear. When it comes to the financing, the transfer of the equitable share is a responsibility of the National Treasury, and this the National Treasury diligently handles and takes care of. In terms of mobilization for funds, just as an obligation of the national government, for Turkana, like it does for the other counties, the National Treasury has borne that responsibility from the time we commenced the devolution. But even when we have attended the summit, we have had counties give different feedback. So some counties are doing very well, others are not doing very well, and so you get to that same conclusion, which Ambassador Wero has talked about, that it is really about the implementers at the operational levels who probably need to do a little bit more than they are doing, and that's for sure. So because it's understandable why some counties have consistently returned great performances across the spectrum of performance, while others have not. So I think, to the extent that the national government is putting in place the necessary policy, legal, and financial frameworks, especially for the National Treasury, we have the PFM, which is giving you the manner in which to conduct your affairs. The National Treasury has been extending technical assistance to all counties, whether even special technical assistance where the request has been done. I do believe that the central government is clearly playing its role. So that notwithstanding, I think what we need to bear as key persons who are charged with the responsibilities of implementation at the county level is also the idea of innovativeness. What is it that you can do differently from the traditional public service? And I think this is where even, when we have commented here, it has come out clearly that traditional approach to solutions will never bring transformation. But as readers, it's also incumbent on us to engage, that innovativeness in the way we conduct our public affairs. Now, Nwaga, I think we thank you for underlining the fact that indeed there's been a lot that's been done, and some very innovative ideas. You did mention about the National Infrastructure Fund, for instance. I do guess we are also talking about the other initiatives that government has taken, and probably even, in terms of ceding some shareholding from, say, something like Safaricom, because if an investment has matured, then you must unlock capital and deploy it for other value creation in other investments. So, but then this becomes a little bit technical, and probably, as you rightfully said, the person out there may not understand it, and therefore, if somebody is spinning a different tale around it, may get away with it. But I think there again is where opinion leaders, who all of us here are, we bear a responsibility, because within your own sphere of, circle of friends, circle of, network, if you can, in sincerity, in terms, discuss some of the initiatives that the government is adopting, and the reason and the philosophy behind it, it helps spread the right word. Of course, it is true that we as government have probably also not been very good in our communication. But you have seen some of the approaches that we have taken at the National Treasury, for instance, including our Honorable Cabinet Secretary, getting into the Bunges Ramonanchi, going into the Mashinani, and, having candid discussions. So, because really, these stories are actually not spun in town halls, but it is in the social media, it in those, Mashinani groups where the talk of what is not. So, and we have, because we have measured, and we've seen that these initiatives have helped, give a positive communication. So I think it is true. What you said is, it is about more of how we communicate. But that said and done, most of also the development that government has done is now, clear in the eyes, because some of the, say, like the infrastructure projects, and take the Rironi Mausamit Road, for instance. If you had taken a drive along that road 6 months ago, and you've taken a drive, this month, I mean, it is all there clearly for everyone to see that indeed, in a couple of few months, we will have a dual road taking us all the way to Mau Summit. So it is also then also about the clarity of what we do as government implementers of projects. And when people see it, of course, again, they get, the satisfaction that indeed what we've been told is happening. I think I would leave it at that. And thank you, Mr. Adera, for that opportunity.
Colleagues, and thank you, the panelists who have spent time. Panelists who have spent time to prepare, to share with us, to engage with us. Colleagues, me, what comes out and stands out is a very simple messaging. Same effort, more money is a running trend through that in whichever government assignment you have, in whichever posting you have, in whichever designation and government work that you are doing, if you can use the same effort and get more money, that is what will take us to first world. The other complications, the other nitty-gritties, the other is a detail. And we have 1 million public servants. You almost are elite club because we have 56 million Kenyans. So please look at yourself as so privileged to be among the 1 million public servants. So can we make same effort and make more money and make Kenyans realize? Because the way we have talked here, you almost have all the solutions. And you're asking questions to seek for answers. Where you thought you did not appreciate the answers had been provided. A simple mantra from Ambassador and my 2 senior colleagues is that if we use the same effort and make more money, so how the rest of the other countries transformed their country and their countries. So, Madam MC, do we have anybody else with a very burning question, comment, observation? I see Prof has been smiling here and his pen is up. Maybe you bring a mic to Professor Mike Wanjohi so that he can ask his question or make his comment, and any other person, so that we just do one last round then break.
Thank you. Am I audible? Yeah, I think so. So, thank you very much, the chair of the facilitator and the lady. Oh, am I too soft? Yeah, the reason why I've woken up is that I've heard a few words which are giving the impression that we are okay. All we do is put more money and more commitment and more focus. And even we don't need agriculture. That's what Weru told us. All we need is put more effort. And then go digital, and we shall go to the first world. Very good dream. But just a dream. And with that dream, Kenya will go to the first world after another 5 million or 50 million years. It's a very interesting, and not just Kenya alone, it's the whole of Africa. Because we are talking about transformation, aren't we? Transformation from what? Up to now, we have not been told from what. Has anybody heard from what? Transformation from what? We have heard to what, but from what? It becomes a very, very difficult issue because the whole of Africa, after America fought for independence and got independence, the problems which made them fight for their independence were transferred to Africa. And up to now, we have not touched any of those problems. So, we were colonized with those problems. Then at independence, we inherited those problems. In 2007, Kibaki had tried to change, and he had been told, if you change, we get rid of you. Do you remember 2007? And then, so he left it to go on into 2010 Constitution. And the problem is now more deeper than it was when it was established in the year 1651. Do you see the year? The year 1651. Under a law known as, British law, known as Navigation Act. I hope everybody will take a mark of that. Navigation Act, which says people in colonies are not allowed to make tools. So, in Africa, you are not allowed to make even a toothpick. You are not allowed to make even a thread to make your dress or your clothes. You are not allowed to make even your shoes. You are not allowed to make a pen. You are not allowed to make even a bicycle. And what of a car? Moi tried to make cars. He was told, stop behaving like a madman. An African is not allowed to make tools. Number two, an African is not allowed to make any goods for the market. I remember Jenga Karume thought that he could make tiger shoes and become wealthy. It was closed by his own government when they realized they were violating the law. The same with the, is it Kogoro? With the softer. And today, you have somebody who makes beer, and she has been told, you have to shut up and shut down together. Of course, the institution, nearly 40 laws of Kenya are all based on those two principles. 40. So you try to make anything, you'll be told no. I remember somebody tried to make in a car in Laikipia. The car was finally registered, but the manufacturing was finally closed down. And it was closed down after it had been ordered by more than 10 people. And more people are now wanted to buy that car. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was representing the heart and soul of Kenyans.
I hope colleagues.
The other, I just want to complete you on that. It's just a small item. The other method, other one is that people in Africa and the colonies cannot utilize their raw materials for manufacturing. They must export them so that manufacturing is done in developed countries, and then those goods are exported back to Africa. So Africa is a market for everything they need, including water. Including water. They must be supplied by foreigners or by foreign investors in their countries. And so on and so forth.
Thank you, Prof.
So what I was saying, I just wanted to make sure that everybody takes note of that law. 1651. 51.
The Navigation Act. Thank you, sir.
It is still our law. And no matter how much you want to do, you cannot make even one telephone. So the digital issue is all intended to drive consumption of imported telephone and computers and everything else, but you are not allowed to make even one telephone.
The wisdom of the elder.
Thank you.
Scholarly, read for many years, has helped this country in transformation thought process. Look at what he's saying. Do we have statutes in our books that are old and impeding transformation? Nitarudia polapole. If you are isolated, the over 2,000 plus statutes in our books, are there administrative statutes, legal statutes that are impeding transformation? Isolate those ones. Deal with them to resolve the challenge of transformation. That's why he's asking, have we talked about transformation? Colleagues, I repeat, it is mindset shift for looking for what is blocking Kenya and other comparable African countries to transform that will set our souls free and will make your mind free to embrace the challenges of transformation. Because as it stands now, litigation that my sister talked about, it is the recent law that people are using to run away with, to do a lot of litigation. But are there old statutes that hold us back, which no lawyer wants to touch? And yet there are administrative mechanisms that help us to stop people who are making cars to make a car, and to stop people who are innovating not to innovate, and to keep us up to 60 years of independence, to be exporting tea leaf. Utabeba container ngapi? How many containers of tea leaf will you export to buy a mobile phone? So Prof is right. We need to change our mindset and think deeply about the historical things that hold us back. If there is no other, I would want Madam MC to give me permission to allow my three seniors here to now go back and we get further direction.
Before you allow them to go back, Mr. Wandera, we have a gift for them. Ndio tusiseme tu asante ya mdomo. We can say it with an M-Pesa. This is KSG. I will welcome Dr. Priska to please help with the gifts to our able panelists. A round of applause for the panelists. They have done a stellar job. And these are thought-provoking conversations, which I think is today and this season is all about that. Because at the end of the day, whether it's growth, whether it's growing national wealth, that last connection is a human part, and that is where we come in. So even if you live here with one idea that gets you thinking, no, it needs to get better. How can I make it better? I think we will have achieved what it is that we've set out to achieve. So a round of applause as they receive. Asanteni sana for your time, for your insights, for the conversations. And I believe when we take a break, we will have time in case you want to further interact with our panelists and our able moderator, Mr. Wandera, if you have any questions. We will take a short break and then we will come back. While we take a break, we are grateful for NYS to make time to be with us today. Watusaidie kufukuza baridi with their good music. So they will, yes. In fact, before we even go, maybe we can hear one or two songs and then we take a break. We will be back shortly.
"100 years of shaping leaders. 100 years of strengthening institutions. 100 years of transforming public service.
The public service of Kenya should reward results, not routine. Impact, not attendance. We must stop measuring time spent and start measuring value created. What matters is not how long a public servant sits at the desk, but how much difference that public servants make in the life of a citizen. For us to make progress, we must not continue to make peace with mediocrity.
100 pamoja.
100 pamoja.
100 pamoja.
Now, the next century begins.
We are now celebrating not just excellence, transformation, agility, efficiency in the public sector, but we will be reflecting on the future of the public service as we support His Excellency the President to realize the vision of moving from the third world country to the first world country, our journey to Singapore.
Join us from the 6th to 8th July as the Kenya School of Government marks 100 years of excellence with 3 days of dialogue, innovation, reflection, and a shared vision for the future of leadership and public service. A century of excellence in public service, building leaders, transforming nations.